All right, I've been working in tech sales for over 6 years now. I started back in 2018, and a lot has changed in those 6 years. Some of it good, some of it bad, a lot of it up for interpretation. So that's what this video is gonna be about. I'm gonna be calling it how I see it, because a lot of people take advice and listen to people who speak about tech sales like it was in that 2010 to 2020 period. So I wanna make sure you understand what has changed so that you can position yourself the right way in your career and also when talking to customers. So let's get into it. But real quick, before we do, if you're someone considering breaking into tech sales or you're currently an SDR trying to get to that account executive role, check the links in the description below. We're working with hundreds of people just like you to help them land the tech sales jobs that are gonna set themselves up for a successful career, and then also helping them succeed once they're in that role. So hope to see you in there, but now let's actually dive in. So I don't proclaim to be some sort of macro economist, but I do think it's important to try and take a step back and look at what's going on at a high level and try and make sense of it. So one big macro difference that I think has caused a lot of change in the tech sales industry, and every industry, quite frankly, is impacted in their own way, is that we went from a decade from, call it 2010 to around 2020, of extremely low interest rates to now one of the fastest rate hiking cycles that our country has seen in our history. And we don't need to get too into the weeds on this, but what it means for companies at a high level, especially in the tech and software industry, is that in that first decade, profitability was not what was important. What was most important to companies was revenue growth. It was grow at all costs, even if it wasn't necessarily profitable growth. So you want a new customer? Yeah, sure, give them the discount, give them the customer success manager, giving all the training and the resources they need, throw this and that in there. And now what's changed in the last 2 or 3 years specifically with the increase in interest rates is that profitability is now much more important. And what that means for you is that companies are having to re-engineer the way they do business. They're having to change their business models to adjust to the new economic regime. So profitability may sound great, but often what that means is companies need to pull levers. It often means increasing prices, lowering the level of support they offer, cutting what they invest in R&D, lowering salary growth. The unfortunate truth is it led to a lot of layoffs, which is what's happened in the last 2 or 3 years. So this has impacted people pretty dramatically working in tech sales, and not all of it's bad. I'll touch on some of the bad later, but I'll also start by sharing some of the good outcomes for people working in tech sales. One of the most clear positive outcomes is that if your company is involved in some of these cutting edge technologies like AI and machine learning, there is no shortage of interest from customers in evaluating software in these areas. A lot of them are getting pressure from the top, from the board of directors level, to start looking into some of these areas and coming up with a plan and an AI strategy. Because what these areas promise ultimately is more efficiency and more profitability. So if companies in all industries are more concerned with profitability, you better be using AI and machine learning to start figuring that out. Otherwise, you're going to be left behind. So I'm seeing a lot more inbound leads, quite frankly, from people wanting to evaluate certain areas like AI and machine learning. And your job in many cases is frankly to become the disqualified prospect. You only have so much time, energy, and resources. You need to be focused on the most quality deal cycles. You can't just give everyone your time and effort. So from that perspective, it's actually put you in a position of strength if you're working at the right company. Not every company is experiencing this though. Another good thing I've noticed about tech sales recently is I think cold calling is making a comeback. I think we're actually entering a golden era for cold calling, and a lot of the email strategies that have maybe worked for the last few years, I think are kind of running its course. Cold calling is a much higher quality interaction because they can actually hear your voice and your tone. There's certain things you can just convey on a cold call if you have a good technique that you just can't do on email. Some people are just trained simply not to open emails. And a lot of the types of projects that are getting funded now have to be extremely high quality projects. Companies are investing in must-haves, not nice-to-haves, and a lot of times that means you need a high quality interaction to get your foot in the door, and you can straight up reach out and call executives. I've actually noticed recently a lot more executives are more receptive to calls as long as you sound confident and you're concise and you clearly convey who you are, why you're calling, and what you want, especially if that's around artificial intelligence. A lot of them, their ears perk up when they hear this now. So it can actually be easier to get access to power now, and this takes me into my third good point about tech sales recently, is that you need to be selling to power. You need to be selling to economic buyers. Things that used to get approved at companies at the director level or below, like a little departmental solution to solve a little niche problem, those aren't getting approved anymore. Budgets are under a lot more scrutiny, so if you're not working with the economic buyer, the people actually signing off on documents to approve projects, you're not going to have a good chance at success in this current environment. And the reason I think this is a good thing is because if you can learn to sell in the environment we've been in the last 2 years or so, and probably will continue to be for the next couple years or so, you're going to set yourself up so well for when the environment eventually does mean revert and maybe does reflect a little more like it was the past 10 years. I don't know if we'll ever get back to that level, but I think we'll land somewhere in the middle. And if you learn how to sell in the current environment, you're going to be a lot better equipped for the rest of your career going forward. So that's some of the good. Now I'll get into some of the bad, but honestly, a lot of this is up for interpretation. Some of this might actually sound good for you. And the first major one I've seen, people in tech sales are expected to do more with less. They're expected to get better results with less resources. Companies aren't throwing tons of resources at every deal anymore. They're not promising major discounts. They're not throwing in little sweetheart deals here and there. Sometimes they don't offer as many internal resources as they used to help you sell these products. And again, this could be looked at as a bad thing, but this also could be looked at as a good thing if you're learning to work more efficiently, if it's kind of forcing your hand to do that. Another major theme I've seen, again, could be good or bad depending how you look at it, is that companies are a lot more process oriented now. A lot of this has to do with a lot of acquisitions that have happened in the industry. A lot of those smaller, unprofitable companies, a lot of them are getting acquired by private equity firms. And the first thing private equity firms often look to do is cut costs and streamline processes. So I work with a lot of reps who say, yeah, my company used to be kind of the Wild West. It was sort of a startup feel. There were different processes. Everyone was doing things differently. Private equity firm comes in, now it's going to be very rigid. The processes are going to be a lot more standard. For some people, this is good. For some people, this is bad. There's no right answer. It's just something to be aware of that's happening in the industry right now. Another bad thing I kind of just addressed in the good section, but this is the bad side of it, is there's a lot more buyer scrutiny and there's a lot more decision makers involved than in the past. What used to maybe just take a mid-director level approval now needs to get sign off all the way from the top, no matter how small. This isn't always the case, but generally, there's just a lot more overall scrutiny over every little dollar that's spent at these organizations. So there's often just a lot more decision makers involved. It requires higher level approvals. They're often focused, like I mentioned earlier, on the must-haves, not the nice-to-haves. And it just changes the way you sell. It's not necessarily good or bad, but it's something that you need to be aware of. And the last bad, which is a funny one to me because a lot of people I talk to trying to come into the industry still have this perception. A lot of the perks you used to hear about have gone away. There's no more ice cream trucks. There's no more massage chairs. There's no more yoga classes, all this different stuff you hear. Some companies make an effort, but in general, the culture has shifted a lot from that and a lot of just throwing perks to attract talent. And it's because of this profitability thing. So I hope this was an interesting perspective. Let me know if you want to see more than these. I just think it's useful to take a step back sometimes at the 30,000 foot view and just try and analyze what's going on so that you can position yourself in the right way. So I hope this helped. If it did, hit the like button and I'll see you on the next one.